In Book 2 of Plato's Republic, Socrates had just finished an argument with a man named Thrasymachus, who was arguing in favor of injustice over justice. That is, it was Thrasymachus' view or claim that it was better for the individual to be unjust than it was to be just. The conclusion of the argument was that justice was indeed superior, but another friend in attendance, Glaucon, was unsatisfied with the way they arrived at that conclusion, and challenged Socrates to prove that justice was indeed the good and not injustice, which they referred to as the common view. For Socrates, justice was wanted not only for its benefits, but for its own sake. Justice is intrinsically good, like the other virtues, for example, wisdom, temperance, and courage, not merely instrumentally good. That is to say, if some things are good and desirable for the benefits they produce, those things are called instrumentally good. Contrarily, other things may be intrinsically good, that is, good in and of themselves, regardless of the consequences they may produce, though they're often apt to produce desirable consequences. Glaucon claims before Socrates and the rest in attendance that there are three classes of goods. 1. Goods that we enjoy for their own sake, though nothing follows from them. 2. Goods that we enjoy in themselves, but also for their rewards or results. And 3. Finally, goods that we enjoy not in themselves, but only for the rewards or for their results. Glaucon asks Socrates in which of these classes he places justice, to which Socrates again replies, in the highest class, that is, the second class of goods that are desired for their own sake and for the sake of their results. So, Glaucon challenges Socrates to convince him, not merely persuade him, or logically corner him into agreeing that justice is superior, as he alleges that Socrates did with Thrasymachus. But Glaucon's challenge is multifaceted. He wants to know what the nature of justice is, what its nature and its benefit is in a person, and what its value is in the world. So, Glaucon revives Thrasymachus' failed argument in favor of the common view that injustice is superior and that people only practice justice out of necessity, as Nietzsche might argue. After all, who is Nietzsche if not a modern Thrasymachus? The idea is, if people can get away with injustice, they will be better off than if they settled for justice, which only allows for herd utility. To this end, Glaucon proposes that he should praise and argue for injustice along with the common view that he hopes will be defeated, while Socrates defends justice with equal veracity. The gist of the common view seems to be the idea that doing injustice is good, but receiving injustice is bad, and the only reason justice is praised is because it allows the commoner the avoidance of injustice. So, to protect the weak majority from the strong minority, the majority institutionalizes laws to suppress the strong, who could otherwise enjoy the good of injustice over them. Again, the influence on Nietzsche is clear here. Justice, then, is merely praised as a good because commoners don't have the means to commit injustice without retaliation. Justice is practiced, therefore, involuntarily and not for its own sake. The best, on this view, is to practice injustice while appearing just, to preserve reputation while maximizing benefits. To prove this, Glaucon recites a myth that's intended to show that a just and unjust person will both inevitably choose injustice, if only given the opportunity. The story goes that Gyges was a shepherd. One day, while tending to his flock, there was an earthquake that opened up the ground. For some reason, this guy climbs into the opening and finds a bunch of cool stuff, but the only things mentioned explicitly are a hollow bronze horse with a giant humanoid corpse inside. The only thing the corpse was wearing was a ring. We aren't told the extent of his looting, but Gyges does take the ring, and even though the corpse was of a stature that appeared more than human, somehow the ring fits on his finger. Anyway, he climbs out and eventually meets up with the other shepherds who, like him, are employed by the king. During their meeting, he realizes that if he rotates the ring on his finger, he becomes invisible. So basically he found the One Ring, if J.R.R. Tolkien is in your mythology. Bilbo is basically Gyges, but Tolkien doesn't give Plato any credit for The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, but alas, not everybody reads Plato, so maybe he didn't get the idea from the Republic, who knows. But anyway, this is where the myth gets a little less creative. The point of the invisibility power is that it's supposed to make the possessor like a god among men. But for some reason, Gyges has to seduce the queen, and she helps him kill the king and take over the kingdom. Like, what did he do? Sneak in and be like, "Hey, look, queen, I can turn invisible. Want to get down?" And that's impressive enough for her to want to help Gyges kill her husband? Like, what the fuck? There are a lot of details missing to make sense of this. Maybe he needed the queen so she would help create uptake with the rest of the kingdom when the king was killed and Gyges ascended the throne. Who knows, but the myth could have stuck to point better. I'd recommend coming up with your own thought experiment involving a ring that turns you invisible so that you can better understand the point. But Glaucon is using this myth as proof in the sense that it's supposed to appeal to our intuitions. The idea is that when considering this thought experiment, we would think to ourselves that if we had the power of invisibility and could take whatever we wanted, kill whomever we wanted, and I hate to say it like this, but bed whomever we wanted with no possibility of consequences, none of us would be able to keep our hands completely clean. We'd be compelled to take advantage in some way. Maybe you're a monster and you'd use it to kill or violate someone. Or maybe you're an otherwise decent person and you use it to steal something so you can pay rent. Perhaps you'll do something that isn't necessarily illegal, but still immoral or underhanded, like manipulate someone or spy on them. The point is, whether the wearer of the ring starts off as just or unjust, they will inevitably commit injustice because you'd be stupid not to abuse this power when there's no chance of being found out or punished. Our selection ends with the following challenge. Imagine the worst, most vicious, most unjust person who is never found out, and the best, most virtuous, most just person who is framed for the worst crimes imaginable, enjoying and suffering the consequences of each. Who is thought to be the happier person? Beyond Glaucon's thought experiment, compare the power of invisibility to the modern power of online anonymity. Like the power of the ring, online anonymity provides us the power to commit acts of vice and injustice with high chances of success and low chances of being found out. Like the ring, you can steal from people and scam them in many ways online without ever getting caught. You can use multiple online platforms to anonymously cheat, pay for sex, or sell it, either through the screen or by arranging anonymous, intimate encounters. You can voyeur or spy on people in many ways that are not only violations of their privacy, but, according to research, negatively affect individuals and society. So, the modern question is, if your use of online anonymity is morally questionable already, would you ever have the self-control or temperance to avoid vice and injustice if you ever came into possession of the ring? Further, if your current use of online anonymity is completely moral, would you be able to retain that self-control or temperance to avoid vice and injustice if you came into possession of the ring? Finally, are Thrasymachus and the common view expressed by Glaucon correct that whether one starts off just or unjust, online anonymity and the power of the ring will always lead to vice and injustice? It's always a good idea to consult relevant disciplines when considering philosophical questions like these, so I'll leave you with one reference as a starting point for this research, if you're interested in this question. Whether you start off just or unjust, virtuous or vicious, will the power of anonymity ultimately lead you to injustice? When I was a boy, a great man, Eugene Abernathy, told me that character is what you do when no one is looking, and that always stuck with me. So with that, and since character essentially refers to one's virtue, I propose we take the myth of Gyges as a challenge to prove Thrasymachus wrong and the common view, and choose justice and virtue, even when injustice and vice appear enticing and without consequence, because that's true character. That's virtue.